Hello, and welcome to our ministry, Generational Ministries. I am your host, Sandra Fitzgerald, and today's short story is entitled The Wind Beneath the Wing Ministers. Standing outside one day, on the farm years ago, a little girl was looking up at the sky, which was one of her favorite pastimes. On this particular day, she noticed an eagle. She stood transfixed as she watched it soar higher and higher until it was only a speck in the sky. She had never seen a bird fly so high, never before, and she never forgot the experience. It would be years later before she would learn that the eagle wasn't actually flying that high. It was using the currents of the wind to give it the lift it needed to soar higher and higher on its way to its destination. In this lesson, we will be comparing the life of great leaders to the life of the eagle. However, our focus will not be on the eagle itself. We will be focusing on the force that gives them the lift that they need to rise to the level they need to be on the way to their spiritual destination. Just like the eagle, he's going somewhere. We will be discussing the many sacrifices made by the loved ones and family members and committee members in order to make it possible for the servant of God to carry out their assignment that has been placed on their lives. It takes strength of character to operate in the shadows, shouldering much of the burden of maintaining quality family life, keeping records, taking more than one share of messages, always taking a backseat to the needs of others. In reflection, we can't help but realize, if not for the currents or the wind beneath the wing people, our ministries would never get off the ground, let alone fly. For instance, the husbands and wives of pastors and deacons. Can we really imagine what their home life must sometimes be like? There you are, sitting down to a nice family breakfast. The first time the family has been together in days, and the phone rings. Someone wants your husband, the pastor, to fill in for a service another has canceled on. Now the missus has to hide her disappointment behind a smile and say, "It's okay, honey," because that's what preachers' wives are supposed to do, right? It's their job to be understanding and compliant. Well, we think like that anyway. Or picture this. It's the holiday season. Time generally set aside for family, food, and fun. Pastor and Mrs. have planned a cozy day to be spent shopping for the Thanksgiving meal and perhaps picking up a few Christmas presents, or a short out-of-town trip they planned for weeks. The phone rings. "Pastor, we decided to have a Thanksgiving wedding. Will you be able to come?" Or here's an email from someone who has the romantic notion to wed on the most holy night of all, Christmas Eve. Being the loving and dedicated and committed pastor that he is, of course he agrees. He's just soared to another level on someone's cool list. He gets the accolades of being the most understanding pastor ever. But they never sent a thank you to Mrs. Cool for being so understanding, never realizing the sacrifice she makes as he misses Thanksgiving breakfast with his family. Who knows? He maybe even does the cooking. Now that would be a double sacrifice. Just picture the Christmas Eve newlyweds as they raise their glasses to a toast a lifetime of companionship. They never thought about Mrs. Claus missing the opportunity to snuggle with her sugar plum on Christmas Eve. It's not that people are intentionally selfish most of the time. It just never occurs to most people how many sacrifices are made by a pastor's wife and his family. The time spent alone while he comforts the bereaved, time spent entertaining themselves while he prepares for Sunday sermons or Bible studies, the long days when his presence is required at funerals, hospitals, house calls, and many other social functions, the phone conversation and administrative duties that consumes a large portion of their time. People just suddenly dropping by just when they think they might have some personal time alone. It's amazing. A fact also has to be considered in many cases. Both the pastor and his wife has a full-time job and children to raise together, cutting back on quality time spent together. Yet in spite of all this, rarely does Mr. and Mrs. Great Pastor get bent out of shape or upset. They gracefully accept their shadow ministry in the lives of their spouses, loyal in their understanding and steadfast in their mission to maintain family balance as they strive to always be the current that drives and pushes their ego to ever higher heights. The life of a deacon mirrors that of a pastor in that he or she, too, is on call for God. Their spouses and family never knows when a crisis will come through and take their ego out the door. Many suppers are kept warm and many children are kept waiting as Deacon Eagle is called to service. In commitment to the pastor, when he goes out to evangelize, deacons go as well. When he's at a funeral, the deacon's place is at his side. Before he ever talks to the bereaved family member, having just lost someone to death, a Johnny-on-the-spot deacon has already been ahead of him and addressed many of the family's needs. Hospital corridors and sick beds testify to their commitment in service. Their name frequently comes up for committee teachings and helping others such as Sunday school, parking attendants, serving communion, helping with food distributions, fending for poor saints, driving vans and providing transportation for various church functions, and socials that require time. And whereas Mr. or Mrs. Johnny on the spot, much of their time is also spent waiting for their eagle to land. In the meantime, someone has to run the home, the budget has to be calculated, schedules must be kept in order, someone has to drop off the kids to their various functions, such as cheerleading practice, band, after-school activities, football practice, volleyball practice. It can go on and on. And what happens when church functions fall on the same day as their little buddy's birthday parties? As usual, Mr. or Mrs. Eagle Deacon steps in without complaint and smoothly handles the situation. They are the unsung heroes that patiently smiles and agrees when someone tells them what a great person they're married to. Or they're the ones that's actually called to do the flower, or they call the flower in, or the beautiful arrangements that's at the funeral, and they never let on that it was them that actually made the cake for the repast that follows. They never make a big deal out of the fact that they were the one that typed the proposal that their eagle submitted to the board of deacons for consideration. They are content in the fact that their eagle is well represented and prepared with whatever they need to soar in their ministry. Consider the life of a person living with a teacher. Imagine how many hours are spent in isolation while their eagle is poring over the scriptures, putting together ideas, then having to drop everything at their request to listen to the eagle's finished, or in many cases not so finished, efforts. Teacher eagles are notorious for being pre-absorbed by their last project, their current project, or their future project. They actually lose hours writing and planning, If they are not working on a project of their own, they are preoccupied with a book or typing or a television program that captures their interest to the point of spaciness. They forget that they have laundry in the machine or meal time needs to be taken care of, and they're easily irritated when someone horns in on their study time. All the while, Mr. or Mrs. Teacher Eagle indulgently just shakes their head and proceeds to take care of the laundry, makes sure Spacey gets a sandwich, and tries not to make too much noise as they keep the household running. They are always genuinely encouraging and constantly seeking ways to make their ego fly higher by supplying unlimited resources of pen, paper, and quiet time. Mr. or Mrs. Teacher Eagle spends much of their time fielding phone calls and social engagement, all for the purpose of ensuring their eagle has the privacy they need to be the best at what they do. And all this is done with unfailing and unselfish love and devotion. Now that's so cool. What about parents and committee members and secretaries and agents and aides? Many times their plans are canceled and their lives are put on hold so that their children or their chairperson or their pastor can shine. There are days when the schedules have to be rearranged in a moment's notice to ensure that somebody's ego gets to fly a little higher. Mom may have to spend her laid aside money to make sure her child has a special calculator that she needs for school. A secretary rearranged the entire morning schedule just so that she can cover the fact that her boss forgot his wife's birthday and allows him to shop for the perfect gift. Or there's a pastor's aide that sacrificed time from his family to make sure his eagle pastor has transportation to and from his many Sunday services. Everywhere, every day, there are unsung heroes who patiently exist in the shadow of others. One has to wonder which actually requires more sacrifice, to be the eagle or to be the current that supplies the lift off for flight. After all, it is these people who have to minister to the eagle. Remember, not many gets too close to an eagle. Care has to be taken in the handling of such a bird. Only the strongest, most patient, and forgiving mate can adapt to the demands of an eagle personality. Mistakes have to be covered that the eagle overlooks from his perspective. Many times from their level, it's hard to focus on the fleeting youth of their kids and family. Their time requirements are different, and since no one else can reach them, it's up to their mate to keep them balanced and grounded. Eagles are very selective in their companions, in many cases preferring their own company to that of others. So it's up to the mate to make sure that social obligations are met and maintained. And to the mate falls the task of encouraging, edifying, supporting, and caring for and bandaging the wounds of their ego when the occasion calls for it. After all, not many are privileged or burdened with being in the inner life of an eagle. Only the mate gets to see them at their absolute worst. Their adoring public only sees the cool pastor who is always there, or the Johnny-on-the-spot deacons, or hear the short stories penned by the teacher eagle. They don't see them when they're sick and grumpy, or rude and short-tempered, or tired or cranky, or pushy and impatient. They're not there when Mr. and Mrs. Eagle could just strangle them in sheer frustration. Yet, in spite of all this, it is their patience and self-sacrifice that enables the flight of the one chosen to serve. This short story is a salute and a long overdue thank you to all those strong, wonderfully courageous people that supply the wind beneath our wings. You may not even know who you are because you're so used to stepping aside for others. Just in case you don't, you are the husbands and wives and pastors and ministers of pastors and ministers and teachers and deacons. You are the members of the various committees that the church and does the long work of reports and cleaning the church and submitting paperwork. You are the cooks, the servers, the program sponsors, the drivers, the parents, the typists, the organizers, the janitors, the stocking stuffers, the tooth fairies, the Easter bunnies, the babysitters, the listeners, the coaches, and everybody that has sacrificed to push anybody to the top of their game. Hats off to you and to your unfailing commitment in coming through for your eagle. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And here's a scripture that goes along with this short story. Romans 13:7. Render therefore to all their due tribute, to whom tribute is due, custom to whom custom is due, fear to whom fear is due, and honor to whom honor is due. In other words, give people their props, because you never know what kind of day they've had, trying to make sure everything runs right. Be encouraging. Encourage each other, and also learn to encourage yourself. Just in case somebody forget to do it, we can always encourage ourselves in the Lord. Thank you for listening, and be sure to tune in to our next short story from Generational Ministries. Thank you, thank you, thank you.